Cities Challenge in Ohio and won't be with us today. So, Mr. Hanson, would you like to get started?
Yes, I would. Thank you. So, Mayor, members of council, and viewing public, we had a very another historic day in the history of water supply to the city of Virginia Beach that occurred the end of last week with the two mayors of the two greatest cities on the East Coast coming together to make a very important announcement that will provide for the security of our city's water supply for many, many years to come. And the presentations, the speeches that were made by both mayors Kenny Alexander and Lewis Jones were so well integrated and told the story so well that I've asked our communications group and our video teams to put together their presentations, and I think that you and the public will get a lot of value out of beginning our first subject today, which is the Norfolk Virginia Beach Water Services Contract Extension. So together, let's relook that. And Julie, if you could, please.
Thank you for all joining the City of Norfolk and the City of Virginia Beach today as we embark on a new partnership that strengthens the regional corporation and supports the growth and sustainability of this region. Nearly 140 years ago, the City of Norfolk built a water system that has since become the second largest water works in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the crown jewel of our city. Our water is recognized among the best in the country, and our system is able to store and provide more than 15 billion gallons of water that can quench the thirst of more than 1 million residents, support businesses, industry, and the military in the region. Currently, Norfolk's water system supports Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, the Western Tidewater Water Authority in Suffolk, Isle of Wight, the U.S. Navy, and if needed, Portsmouth during times of drought. With the vast supply of water, Norfolk ensures our customers will always have a ready supply of high-quality water even in times of drought. Because of the quality, dependability, and the cost-effectiveness of drought resistance of our waterworks, today, Norfolk and Virginia Beach will enter into a historic new water agreement that will continue the successful partnership that our two cities have had for over 20 years. Norfolk will continue under this new agreement to provide Virginia Beach dependable and a long-term water treatment services until 2060, and for as long as both cities find it beneficial for its residents, businesses, and visitors. This new agreement will also provide Virginia Beach with 10 million gallons per day of Norfolk surplus raw water and secure Virginia Beach's need to support extensive economic development. Norfolk will provide this raw water to Virginia Beach at the same price it provides raw water to Chesapeake and the Western Tidewater Authority. The revenue derived from this agreement will help renew and improve Norfolk's water system, which will ensure continued delivery and the highest quality of water to this region. And this partnership, I hope, will be the beginning of many, many more opportunities to promote regionalism among our cities. Thank you, Mayor Jones, for your leadership and your partnership. And thank you, Virginia Beach City Council, for partnering with the City of Norfolk and allowing us to continue to provide your residents, your businesses, your industries, and visitors top quality water. Please welcome Mayor Lewis Jones from Virginia Beach.
36 years ago today, or next month, Virginia Beach City Council made a courageous and visionary decision to resolve once and for all the chronic water shortages that had been plaguing the city and the region. That decision was to build a pipeline to Lake Gaston to bring up to 60 million gallons of water per day to Southeast Virginia for use by Virginia Beach and its partner in the project, Chesapeake. The decision was controversial. The city had to fight through a 15-year legal, regulatory, and political gauntlet to make the project a reality. That gauntlet, which rivaled any that had ever been run for this type of projects, included 7 council election cycles in which the wisdom of the decision to pursue Lake Gaston was often challenged. But the city hung tough, and we did prevail. The project ended 2 decades of periodic water use restrictions or rationing during droughts, and it is now in its 20th year of operation. But getting a reliable water source was only half the story. 25 years ago this summer, the cities of Norfolk and Virginia Beach entered into an innovative and unique partnership and signed the Norfolk Virginia Beach Water Services contract. So while Virginia Beach was constructing the $150 million Lake Gaston project to bring water to Norfolk's reservoirs in Isle of Wight and Suffolk, the city of Norfolk was making equally significant improvements to its water storage, transmission, and treatment systems. Pursuant to the Water Services contract, Norfolk receives Lake Gaston water in its reservoirs, pumps it here to the Moores Bridges water treatment plant, treats it and delivers it to the Virginia Beach water distribution system. And Virginia Beach pays Norfolk for those water services. This hybrid water system is rare in the water supply world. In fact, I'm told that it may be the only partnership of its kind in existence. But the system works, and the benefits to both Norfolk and Virginia Beach are undeniable. The Norfolk Virginia Beach water system has the lowest water costs in the region and among the lowest in the state. The water quality is excellent, and with respect to a vast array of parameters, the water quality is competitive with bottled water quality, but at 1/500th of the cost. In terms of resiliency, the Norfolk Virginia Beach water system has, if you will forgive the pun, weathered record-setting floods and droughts without incident. Water supply was delivered during the catastrophic weather events when many other systems were suffering interruptions of service. The mission of every public water supplier is to provide the highest quality and the most reliable water supply at the lowest practical cost. I don't know of anyone who could say that Norfolk and Virginia Beach have not achieved that mission and much, much more. The benefits of the Lake Gaston project don't stop with resolving a chronic water shortage in Southside Hampton Roads. Lake Gaston water freed up surplus water previously used in Virginia Beach. Norfolk was able to market its surplus water to Chesapeake, Isle of Wight, and Suffolk. The project had the dramatic effect of reducing Southside Hampton Roads' dependence on municipal groundwater pumping and deep aquifers. Recently, we have learned that overpumping from these deep aquifers has contributed to land subsidence, which is a significant part of sea level rise. One of the lasting legacies of the Lake Gaston project will likely be its contribution to reduce groundwater withdrawals and land subsidence. What seemed like such a long time, 25 years ago, has passed quickly. And there are only 12 years remaining on the Water Services contract. In government time, that's a blink of an eye. Therefore, what we announce here today is an extension of the Water Services contract and the continuation of a partnership that has developed, quite literally, a public water supply that is among the best in this great nation, with superior water quality, extreme reliability, and very low cost. On behalf of the Virginia Beach City Council and our 450,000 residents, thank you, Mayor Alexander and the Norfolk City Council and your 247,000 residents for partnering with us to provide a safe and sufficient water supply, one that will enhance and sustain both our communities for decades to come.
And with that as a lead-in, I bring to you Mr. Tom Leahy, who without his diligence as a young engineer in public utilities, we might still be drilling for water today. Thomas, tell us about this contract.
I continue to maintain this is a great organization. Somebody else would have done it if I hadn't been here. So anyway, thank you so much, Mayor and members of council, for the opportunity to really discuss the successful partnership that goes back almost 100 years with Norfolk providing water to then the town of Virginia Beach, and the opportunity to extend this partnership. Again, not going to dwell on it too much. The Norfolk Virginia Beach water system delivers lowest cost in the region, excellent water quality, and stands up to just about any challenge that nature can throw at it. It meets every single mission of public water suppliers. I do know that many of our younger residents aren't aware of where our water comes from. They're either newer residents or younger residents. So how does that get to our taps? Well, it starts at Lake Gaston. We pump it into Norfolk's reservoirs in Isle of Wight and Suffolk. Norfolk stores it, treats it, moves it into the Moores Bridges treatment plant, treats it, and gives it back to us at our master meters. We distribute that water to our residents. Virginia Beach then pays Norfolk for the services provided pursuant to this, what we call the Water Services Contract, which is, you just heard, you authorized execution about 25 years ago. Very important fact, we use more water from Norfolk than we provide from Lake Gaston. And that is because of language in that contract that was meant to conserve energy and conserve water and not pump more water from Lake Gaston than was necessary. So a little figure showing that system. Lake Gaston water is the blue line that comes in from the left of the graph, drops the water off in Norfolk's reservoirs. The red facilities are Norfolk's water system. They store it, bring it into the city, treat it, and give it back to us at our master meters. Of particular importance is the 15 billion gallons of storage in the Norfolk system. Our Lake Gaston project brings in a pipeline with a massive capacity. Norfolk system brings 15 billion gallons of water storage space to the equation. The hybrid of that creates this very excellent water system. We did talk about low and stable water costs. This graph shows the water charges on a monthly basis for 5,000 gallons of consumption among the cities. You can see that back in the late 90s when the Lake Gaston project came online and we had just executed the Norfolk contract, we had the highest water rates in the region. Over the last 2 decades, that equation has changed. We now have the lowest water rates in the region. Not only in the region, but also in the state. So as you can see from this dashboard up there on a statewide basis, our rates are among the lower 25th percentile in the state. There was a time when we were actually the highest water rates in the state. So there are three factors that contribute to these low and stable rates. The first is that in the 1970s and 80s, City Council approved and funded significant investments in our water distribution system. Those investments are still providing great service and will for many, many decades to come, and they return those benefits well into the future for us. The second thing is in the 1980s and 90s, City Council funded the Lake Gaston project, as Mayor Jones indicated, not just with money, but with political capital. You stood tough through a 15-year gauntlet that really was aimed at trying to wear the city down, and they couldn't wear us down, and we prevailed. And then the third thing was City Council authorized a very unique, very unconventional partnership with Norfolk, and you approved that water services contract. Again, we have a lot of new and young residents who might not know where our water comes from or know what the Lake Gaston project is. It's a 76-mile pipeline and pump station. It starts just a few hundred feet from the North Carolina line. It terminates in Norfolk's reservoirs in Olive White and Suffolk. And a very important fact is that it's not just Virginia Beach's project. Chesapeake is a 1/6 owner of that project. They paid 1/6 of every dollar, and they stood with us shoulder to shoulder as we went through that fight to make this project a reality. The project itself starts out with a pump station that is as attractive as it is quiet. You would not know that it's a pump station. The intakes happen to be, you're actually looking at the intakes. They're 15 feet below the water surface there, and that is operating at that time. And you can't tell when it operates. You can't tell it by sound or by sight or any other aspect. 43 miles of the 76-mile pipeline is in an abandoned railroad right-of-way that we acquired. 5 of the 6 major river crossings are in that 43 miles, and we use the existing piers that were left behind by the railroad when they pulled the tracks up. And then 21 of the 76 miles are in a Dominion Power right-of-way. You combine that 43 miles and 21 miles and 64 miles, we didn't have a single complaint from an adjacent property owner in the construction of that 66 miles. And that was a lot to do with why we selected that route. So Virginia Beach delivers the Gaston water to Norfolk. Norfolk provides it back to us as treated water. We pay them. This partnership has worked well for both cities and has delivered a system of really unparalleled resiliency. A very important point is I did indicate Chesapeake is a 1/6 owner and partner in this project. We have important delivery obligations to get Chesapeake's water to a certain place in Suffolk. Those obligations are executed through Norfolk's reservoirs and through this water services contract. So how does it work? We pay Norfolk a rate of return multiplied by the rate base allocated to Virginia Beach. The rate base is essentially the value calculated as the original cost less depreciation of all the facilities that are used for service for Virginia Beach. If it is something that is used entirely for Virginia Beach, such as the master meters at our border with Norfolk, then 100% of the cost of those facilities are included in the rate base. But if it's something like the Moores Bridges treatment plant, which provides service half to Norfolk and half to Virginia Beach, then only half of the original cost, less depreciation of that treatment plant, is included in the rate base. The rate base is monitored very carefully by both cities, audited carefully down to the every last penny. We also pay our pro rata share of fixed and variable operation and maintenance expenses, and there's no markup on those costs. Whatever it costs Norfolk for O&M for their water is the exact same that we pay for our pro rata share of water used. Municipal contracts are not subject to state corporation commission reviews, such as they would be with, say, the private utilities, Virginia Dominion Power, Virginia Natural Gas, those types of utilities. But if this contract were subject to SCC review, it would do very well. It's based on standard American Water Works Association rate-making principles. And again, it has worked very, very well for both cities for 25 years. So the amount of money that is paid to Norfolk for the water services is approximately half of the public utilities water budget. That breaks down to roughly half in the capital charges and half in the O&M costs. It has been a very stable rate, as I will show you later. So this contract has worked well, but it's going to expire in 2030, and as we just heard, that's a blink of an eye in government time. I personally am humbled about how far away 2030 seemed like when we brought the contract to you to sign back in 1993. Now it doesn't seem so far away. So Norfolk and Virginia Beach have tentatively agreed to extend the water services contract to 2060. That's a 30-year extension, or 42 years from today. We have agreed on what's called an evergreen provision that would extend that contract beyond 2060 with year-to-year rollovers until such time as one party gave the other party a 10-year notice to terminate. So what that would mean is if either party wanted to terminate the contract in 2060, they would have to provide notice to the other party by 2050. If that notice weren't provided to until 2056, then the contract would not expire until 2066. So there would always be a 10-year period where both parties would know that the contract was going to terminate. Both cities have agreed tentatively on a $20 million lump sum payment to Norfolk. That would be funded from the unrestricted cash portion of public utilities net assets. We used to call it retained earnings. As you have heard from the previous mayor numerous times, there's a healthy balance in there, and they can absorb that cost adequately. And then finally, Norfolk and Virginia Beach have tentatively agreed to a new water sales agreement, and that would address the fact that we use some of Norfolk's water surplus. So the new water sales agreement, we would agree to purchase 10 million gallons per day of Norfolk's surplus water. That water would be treated and delivered to Virginia Beach along with the Gaston water using the exact same terms and processes we use now pursuant to the water services contract. The charge for that water would be the exact same rate that Norfolk charges Chesapeake and the Western Tidewater Water Authority, which includes Suffolk and Isle of Wight. The year one cost of that to Virginia Beach would be $4.8 million, and it would escalate at the same rate as the Consumer Price Index, which is a condition that also applies to Chesapeake, Suffolk, and Isle of Wight. The effective date of the contract would be January 1, 2019. There would be no need to increase water rates in fiscal 2019, but there would be a 10 or 12% rate increase necessary in fiscal 2020. This graph shows both the payments we have made to Norfolk over the last 2 decades and what that would look like if we had purchased water from Norfolk under the terms we're contemplating today. So the green line is the actual cost payments made to Norfolk over the last 2 decades. The red line is the payments that would have been made if we superimposed a 10 million gallon per day water purchase from Norfolk at the current rate of $4.8 million for that year and have it escalated under the Consumer Price Index for each of those years for that 2-decade period. Even with the, obviously it does increase it by the amount of the water purchase, but you can still see it's a relatively stable rate and is not subject to great inflationary forces. The blue dashed line is the red line, and that has been corrected or adjusted for inflation using the Consumer Price Index for that particular year. So in actual inflation-adjusted dollars, the cost over that 20-year period would have gone down if we had entered into this agreement, say, 20 years ago. As I indicated before, again, it would take about a 10 or 12% rate increase to cover these costs. No rate increase in FY 2019, but a 10 to 12% increase in 2020. That would be July of 2019, July 1. It would add about $2.60 per month to the typical residential bill at 5,000 gallons. We would still be either the lowest water rate in the region, or we would be close to tied with Portsmouth. It would be so close, it would be hard to distinguish the two. So wrap this all up. This partnership has worked very, very well. It's a hybrid system, takes the strength of both systems. It comes out as a situation where the sum of the two systems is much better and much more resilient, better water quality, better costs than the two systems would be individually. That the purchase will require a 10 to 12% rate increase, but the total expenditure stream for those two contracts will still be have very low inflationary characteristics. We will still be among the lowest rates, or if not the lowest rates in the region, and we would be able to continue what really has been unparalleled quality and service for the last 25 years. So we're recommending execution of this contract and set this city with Norfolk up for the next 42 years.
Ms. Henley?
Okay, so saying that we're going to be buying Norfolk's surplus water sounds like we're back where we started. But now we have a guarantee, and it's the whole part of the whole thing. So I take your analysis very well. It's a little different that we're buying $10 million, 10 million gallons guaranteed, rather than where we were in the
Right.
late 70s, where we were buying surplus if they had any. So just so the public doesn't say, well, wait a minute, that's what started this whole thing. We were just buying Norfolk surplus water. We're buying 10 million gallons guaranteed surplus throughout this contract, and we're also contributing all of this gas and water. So, have you ever looked at all of those legal challenges that we had along the way to make certain that they really did have no basis? I mean, I know we were in all of that legality with North Carolina because they thought we were going to damage the rivers so much and so forth. Or have you ever looked at all of those challenges to make certain that they had no basis and we really did no harm?
As a matter of fact, we did. The project, our project, Lake Gaston, was authorized as an amendment to Dominion Power's license to operate Lake Gaston, which happened to be expiring just a few years after our project came online. So the relicensing process started from practically the day we got Lake Gaston. The relicensing process started, and every single environmental agency that had fought us during the project, including North Carolina, federal agencies, state agencies, were all in that relicensing along with Virginia Beach. At the same time, we entered into the 2000 through 2004 drought, which turned out for both Gaston, Roanoke River Basin, and our area to be the drought of record. Dramatically worse than any drought that they had ever experienced, and they had over 100 years of water records for the Roanoke system. And during all of that time, the three reservoir system was studied. We were part of it, shoulder to shoulder, and nobody raised any concerns. We were taking water out during the greatest drought the system has ever experienced, and it did not produce any impacts, and I think everybody there knew it didn't produce any impacts. In the end, we signed a settlement agreement with those 18 agencies, state, federal, and even the Nature Conservancy and a few others, as part of the federal government issuing a new license, a new 40-year license. And the conclusion there was, again, with all the data, monitoring the system we were operating, there was no impact of our project.
And one other thing, I know you were talking about this was helping the whole issue with subsidence. But during that time, we had constructed, I think, a lot of deep wells in Suffolk and Isle of Wight and so forth, whatever happened to those? They're not still being pumped, are they, by somebody else?
Well, prior to Gaston coming online, we had constructed 5 deep wells, 2 in Suffolk, 2 in Isle of Wight, and 1 in Southampton. All those contracts said that after a certain period of time, their ownership was converted over to those localities, and they still have them, but they haven't used them or hadn't had a need to use them. In fact, we had never used them other than to test them. But Norfolk had 4 wells, and it had pumped them extensively and frequently until Lake Gaston came on. And so if you just look at the municipal groundwater pumpage, summing up all the groundwater that's pumped by Isle of Wight, Suffolk, and Norfolk out in that area, it dropped dramatically the year Gaston came online, and it has never, ever come back to anything like what we were pumping before.
In addition to those wells, so you also had the pulp mill in Franklin.
Right.
That was pumping, what, 30 million
Right,
gallons a
and they're
day?
only pumping half of what they used to, and that's on the industrial side, but I was referring to the municipal side, and yes, the industrial side is cut back as well.
Just so that those wells that we constructed are not just pumping from somebody else. They're not being used there either unless maybe there's some.
Well, in theory, they could, but there has been no need to pump them. At this point, they're approaching 40 years old. You'd have to wonder whether or not, I'd have to go back and talk to the cities and find out what they ever did, whether they abandoned them or decommissioned them or what.
Thank you, that's my question.
John, do you have a question?
I have two. One, I think also that since then, the state's also passed new regulations and management over groundwater pumping
Yes.
anyway, and they would be subject to all that regulatory review before I think they could activate those.
You're exactly right. The state is in the process of rolling back municipal permits for the purpose of stopping the overdrafting of water from the aquifer.
We're not still responsible for those permits.
Absolutely not.
Because we had.
Right, absolutely not. We are not.
I have had people ask me the very question you have, because having been long-term residents, remember when we bought water from Norfolk at less than
Not
favorable
doing that
rates.
again.
And so I said, well, it's because we really have no place to bring our water and put it. I had to go walk through that process. But it also means that we have something that very few communities in the country really have, is surplus, high-quality potable water. And you only have to travel around the country to find out people that have water, but it isn't very good, like Florida. Or other places, so that is a big asset. If you look forward and all the demographics and forecast change, it sounds like water is easily and plentiful, but potable surface water is really a very scarce asset on a global scale. So it's a huge asset to have an additional 10 million gallons that we don't need, that we can have when things get tough. So sounds like a high price, but when you look at the insurance, if you ever go thirsty, you'd think it would be worth it. So up front, it sounds tough, but it really is a good deal for everyone. So kudos to you.
Anybody have any questions? If not, thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
So we'll be putting together the final touches on that contract and the ordinance and at our next convened meeting, which I think is going to be the 13th of November, we're going to make that a formal meeting and we'll put that on the agenda. And the city of Norfolk, they're potentially going to vote the very same night. They're having the same conversation this evening with their council. We've had several executive session conversations, but we thought the public ought to at least be presented before we take a break for the election break. Okay, so our next subject, last week we had the disparity study, and so I asked Taylor Adams to work to put together a briefing to summarize what Samir talked about, and to also talk the new chapter of what are we going to do going forward. I'd like to express to the council, I made a promise that we would not interfere or preview or filter any of the data that was presented to you last week. Samir was contracted to perform the disparity study. Taylor worked as the overseer of the contract, but work with him to provide the data because his office maintains that data, or his former office. Now he's in an administration oversight position in operations of finance. But so that was his role. We did not get a look at the briefing charts. We didn't get to filter those like a manager would normally do, to present them for clarity, for accuracy, to make sure that it was understandable and presentable to the council and to the viewing public. Samir was asked to make copies of the briefings at Kinko's, not to use any of the assets in the city, so that there was absolutely no hands-on associated with the delivery of that briefing. So I was receiving the information at the same time you were. I was trying to digest what he was actually trying to tell us. I was trying to, in my mind, take a process that we have in our city with a goal set by you, the council, at 10%, and translate that into a new grading system that the federally approved disparity studies do, based on a 100-point system with a passing grade of 80% and getting a score of 75. And how is that perceived, both with regards to understanding what disparity grading systems are as opposed to how we had graded. And you're going to hear some information here that summarizes what Samir told you. Samir has seen my letter that I provided you at the end of last week, which was a one-page summary so that you guys had a better understanding of where you were and how well you had really done, because it didn't sound that way when we were trying to listen to that for the first time, but you have. And then to be able to talk a little bit about the ways forward, because we certainly have room to improve. And so Taylor Adams is here to talk and answer any of your questions with regards to your concerns.
Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. Hanson, and Mr. Stiles. It is great to have an opportunity to be back here today to provide a little bit of context, as we've had a chance to dive into the numbers that Samir provided. Before I jump in, would like to recognize a couple of members of the Finance Department that are here with me today. Thanks. We have Alice Kelly, the city's new comptroller, who's been with us for just a few months, but already has impressed us with sort of the impact that she's made right away. But also would be remiss if I did not recognize our director, Patty Phillips, who has really been a champion in this space since the beginning of our program, and we're really excited to get to share with you the information that's coming here a few slides in, and just sort of have an opportunity to, but before I did that, wanted to take an opportunity to recognize her and just sort of thank her for her work in this space. The first thing we're going to show you today is fiscal year 18 performance. This is by no means replacing the annual report that you get from the Minority Business Council, but just given where we were, we had our fiscal year 18 numbers were ready. We're finishing that report now, but we thought we'd give you a brief overview of exactly what was in there. And so the great news is $23.7 million in minority-owned business contracting. So these are expenditures. Now, what you heard from Samir last week, and this represents what will be a shift in the way that a lot of what you're going to hear from me today is going to be sort of changes that are coming for our program. We've always shown you expenditures because we wrote a check for it. If we wrote a check for it, we felt with certainty that it was appropriate to report. What we learned from Samir is, for the reason that he mentioned last week, the award captures a single point in time and a uniform point within all of our contracts, and so we're transitioning our reporting to an award basis going forward. But this will be the last year that we sort of show you everything based on the expenditures. We anticipate for the next few years we'll show you both to make that transition a little easier. But here's our performance for 18. What is that? What does 23.7 mean? This is minority only. Women-owned businesses are not in here, but as it relates to the 23.7, that is our now fourth consecutive year of growth, our third consecutive all-time high for minority participation in as it relates to city contracting. This is a great number for us. So last year, you'll remember we were in the neighborhood of 6.8%. This is going to equate to 6.56%. We're still right in that area. We spent more. We're glad that the number grew, but we basically were from a percentage standpoint what we would say sort of consistent with last year. The last line we want to show you here is an overview. Expenditures to minority women and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, that total participation was $57.6 million. To give you an idea of what those numbers look like, of course, you've got the 23.7 for minority-owned business participation. About 700,000 of that is service-disabled veteran-owned participation, and the remainder is women-owned business participation. Why quickly want to highlight, as we always do, particularly with Veterans Day right around the corner. Of course, we want to thank all of our veterans for their service, but also as it relates to that 700,000, our hierarchy is minority first, women second, and then service-disabled veteran third. So that's important to note. We work very hard to ensure that there's no double counting within our pool. So there are a lot of minority-owned businesses that would also be women and then service-disabled veteran-owned businesses. We only count them as minority. And the women, if it's a woman-owned business that also is a service-disabled veteran-owned pool, or a white woman-owned business who is also a service-disabled veteran, that is counted as a woman-owned business, and it's only the remainder that makes up that service-disabled veteran-owned business pool. So where that number looks low, if we were to isolate specifically for service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, that number would come up considerably. So now to the disparity study. What did we learn? Quickly, just as a recap of what you saw from Samir. So I'm compressing a lot of his slides just because what we really wanted to show was what does our participation look like right beside the potential availability. And so what we see, this is the total population that was reviewed under the study or analyzed under the study. And so you'll remember from last week you saw $221.8 million in total women and minority-owned business participation on a potential availability of $296.5 million. What does that mean? It's basically 18.9% participation out of a possible 25.2%. Give or take, what that means is give or take 75% of, or a disparity, you'll see this in a minute, a disparity index or a utilization number of 75, and we'll talk about what that means. But what's important to note here, you only saw the entire pool, women and minority-owned businesses combined. Here's what we wanted to show you today. We've only ever had a minority-owned business goal. Your goal is for 10% minority participation in city contracting. Now, at the staff level, we have tracked the women-owned business participation because we knew that, well, through conversation at the table, that had become part of the conversation. But your goal specifically was for minority-owned business participation. And so that is where we have invested almost all of our staff effort in this place. So when you see, here's the two pools, the total pools laid out beside each other, sort of in the same charts that you saw from Samir. This gets to the minority-owned business piece. So if you look, here's our participation in minority contracting and the potential pool. So if 10.7% of a possible 12%. And if you wanted to take the 12% out, it's 12.0004. But so what does that mean? If we were talking about a utilization percentage there, we're at 89. That'll be real important when we show you 80 in a minute as the gauge for utilization within the market. But over the 5-year period, what matters as it relates to your goal, we can now tell you for the first time that we achieved your 10% goal of minority-owned business participation in city contracting. It's not the end of the story, but it's a real important waypoint for us as it relates to to being able to say that we have been able to achieve what was your direction in this space before we transition our program into a different phase that we'll talk about here in just a minute. But very excited. Of course, these are not our numbers. These are directly from the contractor's presentation from last week. And so great news to report there. Here's what that looks like graphically. Again, you see same two charts, well, same format you saw last week. This is isolated specifically for minority again. And you'll see the 10.7% against your 10% goal of a potential population of 12.004%. And so what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that it's great that we achieved the 10.7%. The goal should have been 12%. We didn't know that at the time. We didn't. If nothing else, what this study has done is it has shown us how to build what should be the pool that contributes to our targets going forward. And so yes, 10.7 when the goal should have been 12, but moving on as we transition in, what does our program look like as we move forward? So you saw a lot about the disparity index last week, and you saw numbers, and when Samir showed you his numbers, he showed broken down by category, goals versus no goals, things of that nature. All of that will inform and sort of drive what becomes our program in the future. But as we are sort of reconciling this with the formats we have traditionally shown you, this is where we hit our first major shift. So disparity index, 0.8 or lower, basically demonstrates substantial underutilization. Something we didn't tell you last week, and again, like Mr. Hansen said, we were hearing this for the first time as well. Important to note, substantial underutilization is a legal term. If we were at 79 of 80, we are still substantially underutilized. If we were at 0.3, it's the same. The term is the same. It's still substantial underutilization. That is the term that is an industry standard as we're doing disparity studies. So it's just important to note when you talk about substantial underutilization, that is any number under 0.8. How do we derive that? It's dollars received over the dollars that were available, and it gives us that number. Ours is 0.75. So what does that 0.75 mean over 5 years? We achieved a disparity index, and this is straight from Samir's presentation, of 75. To get to 0.8, we would have needed $15.4 million more in women and minority-owned business participation. This is not just minority at this point. We're back to the total pool. Important to know that. 15.4 million more over 5 years, or give or take 3 million per year. We feel that this is absolutely attainable. Particularly, we feel, and we'll talk about the recommendations that came from Samir in just a minute, and how we're already doing some of those things. But I will tell you, we are excited to be starting our program with a disparity index of 75. Now, that's not to say that we're going to stake a flag in the ground and declare victory here. We're going to continue working in this space to make sure that our program is always successful. But it is great to be starting at a place where we feel like we can continue pushing ourselves to grow and continue bringing better performance to you. And we feel like this goal will absolutely be achieved in the next 5 years. Things that we learned just on the front end. We achieved the 10% goal for minority participation in city contracting awards. We learned that the appropriate goal, however, should have been 12% all along for minority only. What are we doing? We've already seen that our reporting metrics will change to focus on utilization ratios instead of the global percentages that we've shown you in the past. But more than just global utilization ratios, we'll be looking at sector by sector. There'll be 5 sectors that we look at going forward, and we'll have a utilization goal, as it were, for each of those and for each of the ethnicities that were reviewed under the study. We'll be building those goals around availability. And thankfully now, one of the things the study has delivered to us already and is continuing to deliver is data at a more granular level that allows us to be more focused and more specific as we set the goals. What I would tell you is there's so much that we just didn't know before we saw this data. I mean, we knew that we were strong in goods and services. You've heard us say this. We knew that we were strong in goods and services. We knew that we struggled in construction. The study, the global results we've already seen showed that's exactly true. But what it has also showed us is where there's a population of vendors that we can reach out to and try to engage in the construction space. And that's something that we absolutely didn't have before. And so we're very excited about a number of things that have come out of this work. And so what are we going to do? We're going to continue working to unbundle large contracts. Now, you all heard us last year in the annual report. We've already done this, and it's a big driver of growth of what has already been growth in the construction space. Want to thank the folks in Public Works who worked with us to take what was a large annual services contract. We broke it into 3 pieces and ran 3 bond waiver solicitations that we were fortunate. We awarded, these are $500,000 per year construction contracts. They run, well, it's $500,000 a year for 3 years. We awarded to 2 minority-owned firms and a woman-owned firm. It was a real success. It's a real success story for us. We just finished the first year of those and renewed all 3 of those contracts. We're proud to report that a year later, all 3 of those contracts were used to capacity, and there's already work flowing through. So really appreciate Public Works coming to the table and working with us to create that opportunity. But we're looking for more opportunities to be successful in that space every day. And when we talk about, and so I should have mentioned, continue to unbundle. This is a recommendation from Samir. Another recommendation from Samir was the small business set aside. You heard us talk about sheltered bidding last year. We have a draft of that together. As soon as we see the final, we need to see the final study to see what his specific recommendation looks like to make sure that what we have is consistent with what he is recommending. But we believe that we can be ready to go on that very quickly if you all are ready for it. He mentioned race and gender conscious goals. I want to stop here for just a second and mention that sounded like a quota. You'll remember Samir said this is not a quota. What he was really talking about there is something that we're working on. He was talking about project specific goal setting. Here's what's great. What he did not even know. When he made that recommendation to you, we had 2 employees that were actually at VDOT getting trained on how to do project specific goal setting, because we understand this is the future for where our program needs to go, and we understand that it's a driver of participation going forward. So we were happy to see that recommendation from him. And then this is what's interesting. A better use of data to determine the right goal. So as we mentioned, we were driving on 10%. We achieved 10%. The goal should have been 12. What the study has told us basically is it is informing us on how to bring the right goal to you, or how to recommend the right goal to you in each sector, in each part of our spend, for each type of business with whom we are contracting, what an appropriate goal looks like. And we've just never had data that was specific enough to get to that before. And so the study will give us that, and then what we'll be doing is we'll be running these utilization ratios every year as we build this. And this is why the new ERP is so important. Thank you again for authorizing the sort of new finance system that we're in the process of acquiring right now. The way that we enter this information into that system gives us a real opportunity to be successful here. When you think we're running off of a finance system from 1998 right now, we've updated it along the way, but quite frankly, in 1998, we just weren't. We didn't understand the importance of data in the sense that we do today, and so the new system that we have there will give us the ability to get down to to the level of data that we need to build an appropriate goal for you going forward. That is really all that I have, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Ms. Wilson?
I felt last week, I felt very optimistic last week too, that, you know, we weren't quite where we wanted to go, but there was a lot of things that we identified of how we could move along in this, and so I'm seeing that you've done those as well. And another thing too that I had heard was paying these smaller businesses faster, that they couldn't wait as long to receive their money for their work done because they just couldn't carry couldn't carry it as long. So I'm hoping that you'll put that down as one of the suggestions of,
So that is 100% true, and we
paying faster.
That's right, and that is actually something that we do right now as well for small women and minority-owned businesses. We already offer expedited payment terms. We understand that the cash cycle, we understand dealing with government anywhere is hard enough, and that a small business's cash cycle is challenging. So we do the very best that we can to be a partner in that space, and so yes, we absolutely agree that a real driver of participation here is our ability to get folks through our system faster, both on the way to winning a contract, but then also on the back end of that, which is sort of the payment piece.
So I think this is excellent.
Thank you.
You did a great job, Taylor.
Ms. Henley?
Are you saying that now that we know how to do this, that we will have the ability to, every year when you report this, tell us what our ratios are? Because we know what we're looking for and so forth, so it's something that we can continuously measure?
I will tell you, we do not have it today because we need to see need to see the final report. The final report, in conversation with the consultant between Tuesday and today, the final report should provide the detail that we need. They're also willing to help us understand the right way to get this information into our system. We believe that the timing for that is perfect since we're already acquiring a new finance system, which will require us to sort of reestablish these protocols anyway. So where we can't do it today, I do believe that as soon as we move into the new finance system, we'll have the ability to provide that year-over-year average for you.
But now, since we and maybe I didn't fully understand this before, you said that the 10% only applied to minority, not women included. We haven't sort of lost the attention to women-owned businesses. Where's that going to be?
No, absolutely not. In fact, and thank you for that question. So where the goal was where your goal to us was for 10% participation in minority-owned business contracting. We, just from the conversation at the table, that we have heard you as it relates to. We've also had a 10% goal for women-owned business participation in city contracting. What we know about that is the real number there was 13.2%, and so. So to answer your question, no, we're absolutely focused on both.
But I noticed last week in the reports it would be white women and minority women. So if it's a woman-owned business, and they're a minority, then it goes to the minority count.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, that is correct. And that's just to ensure that we're not counting the same business twice.
So
and
it would be accounted for as a minority business, and then the women then would just wind up being white women only.
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Sounds like it's
That's right.
it's not right, but that's just the way it will shake out because you've separated out the minority women to go with the minority contracts.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Mr. Wood?
Did you have any data on comparisons?
So I thought you might ask that question. We did, and we do. And so before we turn that slide on, let me tell you how I got to that number. BBC looked at our MSA plus Richmond. Why Richmond? Because if you look at the data that they gathered, the vast majority of our contracts that were awarded to either a vendor that resides within our MSA, so basically I think the Virginia Beach Norfolk MSA, and then Richmond. That population drives the 25% availability number. So I looked at our partners here in Hampton Roads. And so Hampton has done 2 disparity studies. Portsmouth and Portsmouth schools have each done disparity studies. The Commonwealth has also, and Richmond have also done disparity studies. However, I didn't think it was appropriate. I didn't know that it was appropriate to apply the same percentage to them because I can't say conclusively that that's within the same appropriate geographic area. So, Loretta, if we can turn on the other jurisdictions slide at the bottom, what I can show you then is sort of what our 75% means with the most recent, up against the most recent data I see for our partners. Purchasing team pulled these numbers together for me, and then we ran the utilization numbers. So you see,
So the
UT
column,
is the
75 for us?
it was 70. So yes, so the UT is the utilization factor where it's 45, where it's 75 for us. You see 45, 18, and 10, and this is where we're happy to be starting at 75. It is a much better place to be starting this. Now, important for me to note, different firm did this research. They didn't, and this firm does not show global utilization. They start basically with already breaking down by market sector. So we had to pull up to the totals to drive this factor. But yes, I mean that's a point. Also, you saw a lot last week. I found this in just some of my own research. You saw a lot last week about what looked like overutilization of Asian American businesses in goods and services, and you heard a lot about the one contract that for 57 million. What I found that was really interesting is Portsmouth has the same overutilization, and in reaching out to a former Portsmouth employee, found out that they used the same firm that we did. So, and I'll tell you what that is. It's actually a wonderful firm. Asian, it is. We use them in human services for medical temps, and which is a very real part of the service provision in that for all of us, basically for every city that's sort of in that space. So interesting. It was interesting to see that overutilization in another city's data as well.
You had mentioned that everybody came from our MSA, but have you done an analysis, or is there an analysis of entities within the city of Virginia Beach, or is that not done in these?
So as it relates, when you say entities with it, oh, you mean specific to our city?
In other words, what is the availability of minority businesses that are owned and operated inside the city of Virginia Beach?
We do not have the data isolated for the city of Virginia Beach in the overarching, sort of in the draft results that we've seen to date. It is highly likely that the final results will isolate. Now that I understand a little more about BBC's methodology, you heard them talk last week about how they build a phone book and then isolate by zip code. It is highly likely that in the final report, we will be able to isolate for that data. However, I don't have it today.
Ms. Kane?
I guess I want to make a positive comment here in light of this. I know the past 5 years that I've been here, Bobby and I have been the liaisons to the Minority Business Council. And I know since you're coming, Taylor, we really have, since I've been here, we've really focused, as you said, on that 2%. And I remember several years back and early on in my tenure that we had the newspaper articles that said we were at 5% or 5.6%. And you're right. This is the first time in my 5 years that I've seen that we're at that 10.6 or 10.7%. So I think things like the SWAM forums that we're doing twice a year, which we had one today at Ziders Theater that I gave the welcome to, full of SWAM businesses, and the Entrepreneurial Academy from Kimsville High School was there. So one of the things, and Samir, is that how you say it?
Samir, yeah.
Had mentioned last week, and we've heard from the businesses throughout the time that I've listened, is that they get discouraged and they give up and they don't want to apply because it's too expensive to put the bid packages together, or they're just discouraged. But I want to encourage them, and I think they should feel encouraged at this point because we are doing these educational outreach things a couple of times a year. We have grown from 5% to almost 11% in just a few years, and we have taken the step to see that that number should be 12%, and we have the data now, and I think we are truly going above and beyond, not above and beyond, but we are truly going the extra mile to try to improve on a daily basis and really looking at our practices to make sure that we're getting them tighter and better. And I think that should be really encouraging to the SWAM businesses that are out there that we are open for business in Virginia Beach, and we're open for business for everyone, and we want to make it happen. So thank you for taking the lead on that and really helping us out, Taylor.
Mr. Earn?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two quick comments. One, I was surprised that the data really was born from the contract award state. And obviously, you know, what you say you're going to do and what you actually pay out in cash is different. And I think that, you know, the way that you've done it is more accurate. But I certainly understand that if we're going to do comparative ratios to other municipalities, that we have to be consistent in terms of how that happens. But I think that it'll, at least as we are going forward, and I think you mentioned it, that at least in the near term, that we're actually going to do a true up between, you know, here's what we said that was going to happen based at the time the contract was awarded, and here was what we actually cut the checks for. So I would encourage you to keep doing that. And then the other part is obviously this is really great information that we know what is now the art of the possible. Whereas before we were just kind of doing a gut check and shooting in the dark. But obviously that data changes over time.
Absolutely.
And the pool of qualified vendors as a percentage for all these different awards is going to change quarterly, certainly annually. So what, you know, if we all agree that this is really good to be able to have real world numbers for goal setting, how do we go forward in terms of making sure that data in terms of the percentages is current and relevant?
So we're starting to talk about that right now. You know, there was that's actually a wonderful point. One of the things that Samir said last week, just sort of as an aside, that I thought was really insightful. He said, and it came out of the mayor's question about the age of the business community, and he mentioned that we see more startups, more women and minority-owned business startups within younger populations. And so what that tells me, this goal will almost certainly increase year over year until the market reaches a saturation point. And what that number is, I don't know. We're starting to talk right now in anticipation of receiving the final report as to sort of what we can do to accomplish exactly that. Because we recognize that historically, what cities will do is they do this once every 5 years. Samir and I were actually talking about this. They'll do a study once every 5 years, and then they don't really know what waypoints they should be achieving. And then when they get to the second study, they don't show nearly the progress that they should have. I think that there's an opportunity for us to be a trailblazer in sort of understanding what the appropriate goal for us is on a 5-year rolling average. I was looking at City of Philadelphia, who seems to have done this. They do an update to their study every year from what we can see, and so we're looking at larger cities that are maybe a little ahead of us right now to try to understand what that framework is. By the time we get the final report, I hope to have a better answer for you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Moss?
The government structure that has the most experience with this is the federal government.
Absolutely.
So how do we compare, how does the region compare to the regional numbers? Because I know that data is maintained. And if we had those up there, what would that look like? And what are they doing that we can learn from?
So the federal system is, without a close second, the most mature in anywhere around. And so this is where, again, I sound like a broken record talking about the final report. Something that's unique, and this will resonate with you, Councilman. The federal government is so far ahead of us, at least as it relates to isolating participation by business category, specifically NAICS code. And so, in addition to having, sort of ethnicity broken down, there's also to the granular level of understanding what appropriate goals should be for size and scope within various NAICS code composites. The SWAM list runs on NIGP codes. There are groups that try to do a crosswalk between the two, but it really doesn't work. I mean, at best you can get to 5-digit codes in each. We think that NAICS may be the road forward for us. This is a decision we've got to make around the new ERP right now, but But if we can get to NAICS, then there's an opportunity for us to track the federal government.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, yes.
So, 2 points. The business in the state, and these are 2 points that the state can help us with. First is understanding that the current Procurement Act requiring low bid as compared to best value contracting is so different, meaning that if you were in a best value contracting system, you could do a combination of low bid and also add timeliness, add quality, and add compliance to this factor of making awards. And what you do by moving to a best value contracting format is you improve timeliness, you improve quality, because you pull their report card out on their performance and you have an opportunity to look at how well they've done. The federal government does this. The Corps of Engineers.
A lot of overhead with that, a lot of overhead.
There is, but you have an inspection group that maintains oversight of all procurement actions, all contracts that distribute public funds for invoices for all projects that you authorize. And we do that work anyway. We just don't take it that one extra step to conclude a wrap-up and give a report card and maintain that data. And as we move to a better ERP system, as the world moves to a better data, decision-driven environment, the ability to provide a scoring system so that compliance is also worked into the price or to the subjectiveness of determining who you make those awards to, you will improve quality as well. A second point, the current system within the state of Virginia really precludes the Commissioner of Revenue from providing much help with regards to tracking what you were talking about, Councilman Ern, and that is how you determine availability. It shifts on a quarterly basis. It grows. If we have our will, our MSA is going to grow. We want it to grow because this economic data I'm going to pass out later today tells you that we're still on the low end of MSAs, and we're very fortunate in Virginia Beach to be the best of not such a really good, prospering, and growing MSA. The Commissioner of Revenue can take that data in, and we're going to modernize them, and they're in the process of modernizing their business revenue and their personal property tax rolls. They're going to be able, at the time of registration, be able to tell you who's in the pool with regards to that industry, so that we can better have that denominator, that availability, that denominator versus award data. And what we'll do is we don't have to invest quite $400,000 to say, hey, where are we? We should have those systems in place. And if all the commissioners within the region are collecting that data, then now you know what the availability is by those industry categories. Because it's really about building a database and having them check the block when they renew their business license every other year to tell you, I'm in the custodial services, I'm in the AE architectural engineering firm, I'm in construction, I'm in utilities, whatever. And we'll be able to have those categories that match up with this. It's all about data collection and then being able to use that data. So those are the 2 thoughts that tells us we're going to have better fidelity going forward.
I was looking, if I may, for just a minute, John. I was looking at your figures up there. The difference was only about $3 million.
Oh, yes, sir. And that's women and minority combined, $3 million a year. But yes, in just minority, that's right. We're
I guess
right
my
there.
question then is, can you target certain firms to bid, or do you have to put it out on the open market?
So we do both. The way that we were successful on the job order contracts is we held a series of project information sessions, found out who was out there, and then what we did was we made sure that that we got that solicitation in as many hands as possible. What happened was on bid day for those, the first one, we had 16 bids. 8 of those were by minority-owned firms. All 8 of those minority-owned firms were pre-qualified. What we know is if we can get a larger population on bid day, we have a larger opportunity to make an award. And so we are in that space real time.
Okay, Mr. Boss.
He is correct about best value, but also when you award in federal government, when you award on other than price, everything is subject to protest. There's an external agency that doesn't work for the agency in question, which we do not have, that takes and audits and determines all those things. There are a lot more protests than you think, and there is a lot of external oversight on fairly large contracts on what those guiding criteria are. None of the infrastructure which we have here today. So people shouldn't think lightly that you can achieve those outcomes and meet the standards of expectation of other than price without a lot of time commitment. Those processes take time. I'm just sharing that with you. I've been down that road and have a lot of highly paid professional staff and lots of lawyers, I might add, that help you along that way. So you just need, when you're saying that, to meet the integrity standard that isn't being provided by low price, comes with a high payroll and time cost.
A lot of justification.
You bet.
And Mayor, to further answer your question, one thing we will certainly see when we dig into the nuance of goods and services, equipment, construction, we will see places where we are lagging, where there's a good bit of work to be done.
Yeah.
We just need to get that data from the.
Seems to me
town.
like you could close that gap pretty quick doing that.
We believe we're on it. We believe we can.
Know what it is?
All right, anybody else have any questions or comments? If not, thank you very much. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, Mayor, members of council, our third briefing today is libraries as a technology hub. And I asked Eva to come forth. We hadn't heard much from libraries over the last 12 months since the last budget cycle. And I thought it was a great opportunity for you to get exposed to some of the great and wonderful things that are going on in your public libraries. And so with that, Eva Poole.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. Our library uses technology in 3 ways to serve the residents of Virginia Beach. We provide free and equitable access to technologies that residents might not own or have the opportunity to experience on their own, and that's anything from computers to telescopes. And we use technology to provide customers with convenient access to digital collections. And we use technology to help residents of all ages build the 21st century skills needed to survive and thrive in today's world. So it's a pleasure today to tell you our library is a technology hub. For those residents who still have the nostalgic view that their public library doesn't still have books, we do have books and always will. But we will always be the free place for the internet and free Wi-Fi access, but we are seeing more and more people coming into our libraries with their own machines and plugging up to the library's resources and using their own devices and our new technologies. So this is the part that's real exciting. First, I'll talk about our take-home tech collection, which includes devices customers can check out, and they can check out up to 2 at a time to use at home for about 21 days. The Roku streaming devices are preloaded with movies, TV shows, and library resources for customers to access and enjoy at home. And then the spiral ball at the top that you see there is a ball robot with amazing capabilities, primarily for teens and tweens. It's partnered with an iPad app that provides basic tutorials for learning about coding and programming the robot's lights, sounds, and movement. And then this is a Code-A-Pillar. And the Code-A-Pillar is an engaging toy for preschoolers. Children can program the toy to go in different directions. Each easy-to-connect segment represents a different piece of code, and that's like go straight, turn left, turn right, and it plays a sound. So the kids love this. This next one is a play-away view, and it's a handheld animated picture book. And young children can enjoy the videos created from classic storybooks using the original illustrations and text. And then our library began lending wireless hotspots this year for those who may not have internet access at home and who may need to, while they're on a trip, to use this as well. In September, our library began lending 2 telescopes, which were donated by the Back Bay amateur astronomers. And the telescopes include star maps and informational sheets to enable families to look at the stars from their homes. And our library offers technology that can be checked out and used to play within our buildings. A library card is required to use these, what we call stay and play items. So this one is an Osmo. And an Osmo is an award-winning educational gaming system designed for iPads that provides a bridge between the real and digital world. Players use physical objects, some as simple as pencils and paper, to interact with these games on the iPad screen. Osmos offers a variety of educational apps that are designed to encourage learning and collaboration while providing a hands-on opportunity that goes beyond the screen. And then our library uses educational coding toys in programming to introduce basic coding concepts to children. And these are based on the ages of the program audience. For children as young as 4, this Cubeto is a programmable robot that does not require a computer or a smart device. And this robotic toy uses stories, colorful maps, a control board, and 4 types of blocks to program the robot. Children follow along with a story and place blocks on the control pad in a specific order so the Cubeto reaches a certain designation on the map. These robotic toys were funded by a grant from the Virginia Beach Library Foundation. Dash and Dot. These are 2 programmable robots for ages 5 and up, and they are programmed using apps that introduce coding concepts in different ways using both puzzles and free play. This app progresses from a basic introduction to the controls on Dash and Dot, to an app that uses a visual block programming language called Blockly to introduce more advanced coding concepts such as conditionals and loops. The Ozobot here is another programmable robot for children ages 8 and up, and this uses color to code. Sensors on the robot detect both color and combinations of color. And then there's 2 or 3 color codes that serve as commands for the Ozobot, such as go fast, turn right, turn around. And then children use these black, red, green, and blue markers to draw a path or maze from the Ozobot to complete. And even Dave can work this one. I talked about the spiral ball robots earlier as our Tech Home Tech item. And we're using these robots in an after-school outreach program called the Spiro Code Club. And the goal is to demystify computer science and spark an interest in coding and robotics for teens as hobbies and potential career paths. Library staff take these devices to the students at their school campuses to provide easy, convenient access. And the program launched at Green Run High School. Here's some Green Run High School students in early 2017. And we've also placed it in Virginia Beach and Bayside Middle Schools this school year. So available technology in our library system also includes 3D printers, and we offer these since 2015 at our Central Library and at our TCC City Joint Use Library locations. And this summer we replaced the printers at those locations and added printers at Bayside and Great Neck. And customers of all ages use these printers. They make everything from missing game pieces to models and figurines and product prototypes using an app. And then we have also received a grant from the Friends of the Virginia Beach Public Library last year to replace all of our children's computers with iPads loaded with educational apps for preschoolers. In addition, through our Library Foundation, we secured a $10,000 grant from Cox Communications to provide iPads loaded with educational apps for children in grades K through 3rd. And our library introduced self-checks in our locations more than a decade ago. And to provide up-to-date applications and technology services that meet the needs and expectations of our customers, we're implementing new self-check stations this fall. And these look really awesome. Wait till you see them. Customers will be able to check out materials, they pay their fines and fees at the self-check machine, renew their items, view items on hold, and with all of our tourists in town, they can select from 20 languages in order to conduct transactions using our self-check machines. Wireless printing is being tested in our libraries and will be rolled out on Monday, November the 5th. This will provide customers with faxing capabilities at all of our public printers. And coming soon, our emerging technologies librarian monitors technology trends that have the potential to impact libraries and the customers we serve. So here she's demonstrating a virtual reality headset as part of her hands-on training that gives staff opportunities to engage with new technologies. And we're not lending virtual reality headsets yet, but it's important for our staff to learn about new technologies and be able to anticipate how our customers could use this technology in the future. And speaking of the future, as you may know, our library currently delivers early literacy outreach, which is programming to children in daycare centers. We go to preschools, even military bases, using our bookmobile and a van from the city motor pool. With funding from the Virginia Beach Library Foundation this year, we hope to add a fully customized cargo van to more efficiently provide early literacy outreach. And we envision this vehicle being versatile in order to help us serve residents of all ages in our community. And so we're going to take out our technology from the libraries and actually bring those out to daycare centers, have a mobile laptop lab located in this vehicle, and tech-specific services that we can load onto the van and easily provide outreach to children, teens, and adults. So thank you, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Yes, Mr. Mahal.
I know you used to do the big print books and the audio books, that was a federal program. Are you still doing that? And have they changed the technology basis of that? My grandmother used to use that program.
People are still checking out the audiobooks, and they love them, especially on long trips. They can listen while they drive. So yes, they're very popular. We still have DVDs, mostly all of the, yes, and large prints too.
All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Yes, yes.
I just want to say thank you and
Sure.
just a kind of a story. My son and I go every Saturday morning, and we walked into the kind of the kiddie corner, and there usually were just the two computers for kind of probably like 6-year-olds and up. And the preschool iPads were there, and it was just the best thing for him. He was so entertained and
Right.
very excited. And then the Caterpillar we checked out, and that was very cool to see a 3-year-old grasping those concepts and using it. So I think the technology integration is really going to make the library very relevant, and
Right.
I'm really happy to see that's the direction we're going in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Any further questions or comments? If not, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Very
Eva.
interesting.
Appreciate you putting that together for us. All right, so we got Carolyn and Jimmy here for pending items, pending planning items.
Good evening. I would first like to introduce to you Bill Landfair. He is our new planning evaluation coordinator. So he is managing all things related to the planning commission, so you will be hearing from him hopefully every month and hearing from him shortly. Jimmy's up first today.
All right, we'll get things moving because I know I stand between you and dinner. So, Good evening. As we said, Bill Lanfair will be presenting with me. We're going to take you through planning items that are to be considered by on your November 13th and 20th meetings. So there will be 6 items for consideration on November 13th, including 3 subdivision variances, and then there will be 7 items at your November 20th meeting. First up is a request for a subdivision variance to lot width in order to subdivide a site into 2 lots. The site exists as a corner lot in the R10 residential district and requires a minimum lot width of 90 feet. As the lot exists today, it only has 75 feet of width and is currently deficient of the requirement. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the site into 2 lots. Proposed Lot A remains deficient of the required 90 feet of lot width as it remains with the same 75 feet as it currently exists. The existing single-family dwelling on the site is to remain. Proposed Lot B in the rear meets all minimal lot dimensional requirements, and a new single-family dwelling is proposed to be constructed on the site as depicted on the slide. The developer of the adjacent parcel did speak in opposition at the Planning Commission public hearing. Their concerns focused on potential drainage issues, the orientation of the home on the adjacent parcel facing the back of the proposed dwelling on Lot B, and the Planning Commission did vote 9-0 to recommend approval of the request.
We will get a verbatim of the opposition.
Absolutely, and we will include that in your package.
Is there a history of flooding or issue? He said he's concerned about draining issues. Is there anything to substantiate that?
We are unaware of any issues at this point in time.
Thank you.
This isn't one of the lots that they're building up, because I was just over on that road somewhere, and they were putting a lot of dirt on the back of some place to make it level.
That is correct. The developer on the adjacent parcel is the one who came out and spoke in opposition, the one who's currently being developed.
Saw that the other day.
All right, next is a request to operate a family daycare home within the Grassland Farms neighborhood off of Holland Road. The applicant intends to care for up to 12 children within the single-family dwelling. Proposed hours are from 6 to 6, Monday through Friday, and we are unaware of any opposition at this time. Next is a subdivision variance request to properly record a lot that is deficient in both lot area and width requirements. In 1956, a deed was recorded that subdivided the site, however, no plat was recorded as required. As it exists today, the lot has a width of 105 feet, which is deficient of the 150 feet that is required, and has 41,000 square feet, which is deficient of the 1 acre that's required. The existing single-family dwelling on the site is dilapidated and is proposed to be replaced with the single-family dwelling that's depicted on the screen. Staff is not aware of any opposition to this request. And our final subdivision variance for today is a request to re-subdivide the existing 2 parcels into 4 parcels along Old Great Neck Road. The existing 1.5 acre site is proposed to be developed with 4 single-family dwellings. Lots 1, 2, and 3 all meet the dimensional requirements. However, Lot 4 is deficient of the 80-foot lot width that is required, as is proposed with 40 feet. It should be noted that proposed Lot 4 contains nearly 19,000 square feet, which is nearly double the 10,000 square feet that is required. 3 speakers did voice concerns at the Planning Commission public hearing and discussed concerns with the potential for increased traffic, parking of construction workers' vehicles during construction of the houses, and the impact of construction activities on the residences. In addition, 1 speaker did voice concerns with the proposed number of lots and said that 3 lots were preferred rather than the 4 that are proposed. Planning Commission voted 9-0 to recommend approval.
Ms. Henley has a question.
The applicant's name is Residential Rental Properties.
That is correct.
Is there significance to that? I'm assuming all of these then are going to be rented?
We can seek that information for you to clarify.
Single-family residences?
I believe when, in speaking with the applicant, that detail has yet to be
I would be
determined.
interested in the significance of that name.
Variances allow for conditions.
But we will look into that information and we will get that for you.
Just saying.
All right. Number 5, this is a request to modify the proffers and conditions associated with a 2015 approval to construct bulk storage yard in order to store RVs and other commercial vehicles on the property. At the time, access was to be provided to the site via an ingress-egress easement off of London Bridge Road via Castleton Commerce Way. Since that approval, due to the change of property ownership, the applicant no longer has the ability to access the site via the proposed easement. The applicant is now proposing to access the site off of Dam Neck Road through an existing curb cut via an ingress-egress easement across the parcel to the east, as you can see on the screen. In addition to changing the access, the applicant requests that the conditions limiting the height of the containers on site to 6 feet be modified to permit containers up to 10 feet. In addition, the applicant requests that the condition prohibiting generators be modified to allow generators within vehicles such as ice cream trucks and other RVs. 4 speakers did appear in opposition at the Planning Commission, stated concerns including screening of the storage yard to adjacent neighborhood, noise, tree removal, and stormwater drainage. Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval 9-0, and it is likely that opposition will be at the City Council hearing for this request.
Yes.
Is this the one they were having some problems with the dump trucks going in and out behind Prince George Estates and Mayberry off of across from Cal?
Prince George Estates is adjacent to this one, so that may be the same request, but I am unaware.
John?
Mark, I'd just like to understand later what happened to the easement that they have, because usually if you have a easement, you have some legal vested for transit. So what transpired such that whatever easement they had, did they unilaterally lose it? I'd just like to understand the legality of how they lost their easement.
Sure. And I believe there is detail on that in the staff report, and this has additional details as well.
That ingress egress was proposed and it was never recorded. So apparently that property has changed hands and that property owner is not agreeable to that ingress egress that was proposed in 2015.
Was it a condition of our approval?
It was, and
So I'd
so,
like to understand the legal implications of how something that we legally granted didn't get recorded and we don't have a right to enforce it. I'd like Mr. Stiles to opine on that. And what are we doing in the future to make sure that doesn't happen again? I'd like to understand that too.
so it was part of their proffer agreement, and so their request is to modify those proffers as well as the conditions.
Correct.
Whose job was it to record it? Was it the applicant's job to record it, or?
It's a private easement, so yeah, it would be.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't a party to the easement, I'm pretty sure, so.
But if it was a condition of all of it happening and they got the use, then they're still obligated to meet the terms and conditions of the proffer, or the use that they now have on the property would not be allowed.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to understand. So I think we have an enforceable recording. If it didn't take place, we tell them to stop operating. I just want to understand it.
Okay. We'll look into it for you, sir.
All right, and finally, our last item for the 13th. This is an application for a 17-story tower with 266 apartment units, a restaurant and retail space on an oceanfront parcel. This is a request for alternative compliance, as the form-based code allows up to 30% of the floor area of a project to be multifamily. The 266 proposed multifamily units equates to 45% of the total floor area. Therefore, alternative compliance is required. A by right development of 305 hotel units or 265 hotel rooms with up to 40 multifamily units could be developed as a matter of right at the site. The connector park between the proposed tower and the existing Hyatt House Hotel will be improved to incorporate design elements to enhance pedestrian wayfinding to provide vehicular access to the site. The Resort Advisory Committee has reviewed and voted to support the request, noting 2 concerns. The first concern was with the Atlantic Avenue facade design. In their opinion, should be upgraded to encourage additional pedestrian activity. Second was the preference for vehicles to access the site off of Atlantic Avenue. Traffic engineering has studied the access point and recommends access off of the connector park as depicted. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 with 2 abstentions to recommend approval, with the addition of 2 conditions that addressed additional landscaping to deter cut-through traffic, pedestrian traffic to the property to the south, and a condition to provide additional transparency on the first 2 floors for a more pedestrian-oriented street frontage. All right.
Good afternoon. We have 7 planning items scheduled for November 20th. They include 5 conditional use permits and 2 zoning ordinance amendments. The Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval of all of these applications. Item 1 is a conditional use permit for a car wash facility located on the site of a vacant bank building fronting General Booth Boulevard in the Princess Anne District. One speaker was in opposition at the Planning Commission hearing and spoke of concerns about trash dating back to when the property was used as a bank. Regarding the car wash, the speaker voiced concerns about potential noise. Category 4 screening will be provided adjacent to the single-family neighborhood to mitigate the impact of the use, and the existing vegetation along General Booth Boulevard will also be maintained. To further mitigate impact on neighbors, the Planning Commission made a recommendation to adjust the hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Previously, the hours proposed had been 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Item 2 is a conditional use permit for a residential kennel on Kellum Road in the Bayside District. The applicant has 9 companion dogs, Jack Russell Terriers. They're kept indoors the majority of the time. There are no outdoor kennels. There will be no breeding or selling of dogs from the home. Staff is unaware of any opposition to this application. Item 3 is a conditional use permit for a bulk storage yard in connection with wholesale granite sales in the Taylor Farm Industrial Park in the Rose Hall District. The storage yard will be located in front of the building. The original application was deferred by the Planning Commission back in December 2017 to allow the applicant an opportunity to work with surrounding property owners on outstanding issues. These issues included inconsistency of the use with deed restrictions, which do not permit outdoor storage in front of the buildings. One speaker in opposition was present at the Planning Commission hearing and spoke of concerns about the appearance of the bulk storage in front of the property and the lack of adherence to the deed restrictions. It should be noted that the city does not enforce private deed restrictions. New evergreen plant material will be provided along the property frontage to help screen the view of the bulk storage yard from the road. And the Planning Commission recommended a condition establishing expiration of the use in 7 years' time, which was found to be acceptable by the applicant.
Can I get the verbatim on that, please?
Yes, ma'am.
And the applicant is the property owner, correct?
That's
Not
correct.
the leasing.
That's correct, yes.
And was the person in opposition satisfied with the
The
evergreen
limit,
screening and not certain?
I would have to infer no, in my personal opinion, yes. The real issue for them was the lack of adherence to the deed restrictions. I think they felt that the screening, while perhaps helpful, would not ameliorate the view from the roadway.
Was the person in opposition a neighboring business or?
They were an attorney representing neighboring businesses.
John?
So in the staff analysis, we went back and looked and made sure that at the time the original zoning was done, that the deed restrictions weren't also duplicated in any kind of proffers or condition when the property was zoned for its current purpose.
I'll have to double check that, sir.
I would like to have that validated, please.
Yes, sir. Item 4 is a conditional use permit for a communication tower 125 feet in height located off of Holland Road in the Rose Hall District. The tower will be located within a wooded area on the property, which will help to mitigate the view of the structure from the surrounding area. A determination of no hazard to air navigation letter was received from the FAA. Staff is not aware of any opposition to this application. Item 5 is a conditional use permit for an automobile filling station located at the intersection of Laskin Road and Bird Neck Road in the Beach District. The site is currently vacant and will be developed with a 3,000 square foot convenience store and 12 fueling stations. The building architecture will maintain a coastal theme. One letter of opposition was submitted voicing concerns about the use of the property for an automobile filling station, but there were no speakers at the Planning Commission hearing. Item 6 is a zoning amendment that will fix an inconsistency related to the current definition for dwellings, attached townhouses, by better clarifying the dimensional requirements for these unit types. This amendment essentially clarifies that townhouses are defined as 3 or more attached dwellings, whereas semi-detached homes are 2 units with 1 common wall on separate lots. And then finally, item 7 is a zoning amendment that will fix an inconsistency related to single-family dwelling setbacks in the agricultural districts, including codifying a dimensional requirement that staff has been implementing. The setbacks were omitted previously as an oversight, which this amendment simply seeks to correct. Yes, sir.
Since you said staff has been implementing without the ordinance, what was the authority to implement the standards that we have been implementing without the codification?
I think it was felt that the ordinance was unclear, that staff over time has been making an interpretation which they believe to be the correct interpretation, but they feel now that the time is ripe to make it very clear and explicit in the zoning ordinance.
If it wasn't in this packet, I assume before we vote, we will not only get what's proposed, but the history and the analysis that brought it forward.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Ms. Henley.
I would like the wording of those two ordinance amendments for my district forum this week, please,
Sure.
especially the one dealing with ag.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all the planning items? Okay. Mr. Hanson, I believe you had some additional comments.
I do. I have two things for the council as we, as you know, our PDC works, has a very effective economist section, and what I'm passing out, I got copies set aside for you.
You did, oh, well, this way.
And
That was enough,
there's enough?
right? Did Jim get one? Oh, there wasn't enough.
I got one. That's-
So, we will be, as you look at this, if there are charts, you know we have a 5-year forecast briefing coming up. And we have begun to invite our PDC economists to join you all in that joint session in November to talk about what's going on regionally. This is the 13th edition. They've been getting pretty good about this information. I think you'll find it interesting. There are by city analysis. You can see some of that information there. But if there are specific charts that you would like for him to include in his briefing, that's why I grabbed a copy right out the gate so that you might tab something and then inform me that you have an interest, and I can have him add that to his briefing so that he will cover any specific topic that you may wish. So it's lots to look at. Don't expect you to be able to pull anything out of it that fast. Item number 2, as you know, Hurricane Michael came ashore in Florida. And that monster just kept coming up across Georgia and South Carolina, and then it veered right into Hampton Roads and Virginia Beach, and it collided with a cold front. And that night, we had those severe winds, 50, 60-mile-an-hour gusts, and tremendous debris. Our staff, our waste collection staff, has been busy. They worked overtime Saturday. They worked overtime Sunday. That was volunteer Sunday and had a great showing. They worked overtime today. They brought highways into the fight with dump trucks to keep the bulk loaders, the clamshells working. We put on extra maintenance to try and clear up. Took us 7 days to clear routes 1 and 2, the Tuesday and Wednesday routes. They are the most severe debris intensive areas. We'll make some better headway on routes 3 and 4. The public remains patient, but our teams are doing some brilliant work, some great work, and they are not rushing. They are being safe. They are driving safely. They are not rushing. And so I indulge your patience with your constituents to tell them that we have all assets forward. We're working diligently to pick that blow up. We haven't had a blow of that nature in quite some time, and hopefully folks are understanding what they got to do. And I think our next public affairs effort will be to get people out sweeping their gutters, because I have a lot of debris that's left over still in the gutters, and our citizens have a responsibility to get out there and help work those gutters for us. And so I asked our video team to take some time to go out and take a look at the effort that's going on out there and present to the council and the viewing public just a highlight of some of the work that they're doing. And so Julie's going to run a video.
Well, since the storm hit, we've extended our working hours. Normally it's a 10-hour day. We're taking it closer to 12. The volume is such that we haven't even come close to even finishing Tuesday's route, which is at this time approximately about 50% complete.
Well, at the moment we're dealing with probably about 10 times what we normally have. For instance, today it's approximately 3 o'clock on Wednesday, and we're working on what we would be picking up right after lunch on Tuesday. So we still have quite a bit of ways to go.
What we're doing is we're using our boom trucks for the excess piles, and then we're using our tail end loaders to pick up the bags and just the normal 2x2 piles. So yes, they can have multiple piles out there. We have 2 different trucks that are picking up.
Just in the boom truck collection alone, since Monday, we've collected over 227 tons of limb debris. So add that to whatever we're gonna collect with the bags and the other stuff that's serviced by hand. You know, that's gonna push us past our even peak season amount.
Normally we pick up 2 piles per household. If you do have more than 2 piles, we ask that each pile will be in 4x4, and we normally pick up 25 bags per household. We will pick up more than 25 bags per household.
Due to the increased volume, we are unable to take care of everything during one pass. So it may take multiple passes for us to service everything and everybody. We will continue to get what was in our regulation, but we do have a responsibility to service the whole city. So we do have to move at a rate and a pace that's conducive to us doing that.
We definitely do appreciate all the patience the residents have been giving us, and we've seen a lot of appreciation. But we're working really diligently to get up as much as we can, as fast as we can. So we really do appreciate everyone's cooperation.
So if folks are impatient, our workers are twinkling their eye and a smile on their face, and they're saying, "Ma'am, I'm just the waste collector. My route supervisor is going to swing by and talk to you," and we're on our best behavior out there. And I tell you what, our neighbors, our citizens are on their best behavior too. So it's working out. We're getting through it.
Just a comment. A while back, Dave and I think Steve and a couple of other people and myself had the opportunity to visit the waste management people at 6:30 in the morning. And I want to tell you, that's a happy bunch of people. They really are.
Morning people.
They are a happy bunch of workers.
Yeah, but you didn't tell them, Mayor, you brought Chick-fil-A sandwiches with you, so they were really happy.
Wow.
That was nice.
They were,
join in on that.
They were just a great bunch of people, great attitude.
They do. They're fantastic.
And
I never
it was
complained
really
anywhere
enjoying
about
being there
trash.
with them that morning. Yeah. Yes, Ms. Henry.
I have an item, but it really flows right with that. Looking at what you put in our packet about the infrastructure portfolio update, and knowing that we're getting into the budget cycle now, as I think this indicated, and thinking about these storm situations we have had this year with Florence and Michael, looking at the devastation down in Florida with, after Michael, just unreal to look at how everything was leveled. When we are building our city buildings now, and I know we've got some schools that are on construction, like Chris Sand Middle and so forth. Well, 2 things. Are we, and knowing from Florence, when we got that mandatory evacuation thing and we say, whoa, we can't handle all those people in our centers, are we building these schools and other public buildings more to Cat 2 structures now so that we can use them for shelters and to make certain they're going to withstand these more intense storms that we're getting now? Are
Right.
we doing that as a regular thing
Right. Category 2 is our standard.
for all of our schools and public buildings in general and so forth? Because I think we really have to recognize that that storms are more intense now, or they seem to be, and I hope we're calculating that into all of our building standards for our public.
Right,
buildings.
unless you're right on the oceanfront where we do have a higher degree, higher requirements for that, but we're not doing a lot of city construction up there. But as you know, all our buildings are Category 2 shelter program worthy with backup generators associated with that. So we've moved in that direction many years ago, recognizing.
Coach Sand Middle is under construction now. It's going to be Cat
Yes,
2
ma'am.
and
Yes, ma'am.
school and
Yes, ma'am.
very good.
I think a bigger issue than the cat story is increasing the elevation of the buildings.
You could see it was apparent, the elevation of of both the Princess Anne Middle School and the Thurgood School.
Yes, sea level rise has been incorporated in all design. However, as Ms. Wilson joined me for the PDC, I participated on a subcommittee, recurrent flooding and sea level rise for all the CAOs, the 17 jurisdictions, and we made our presentation through the PDC for their recommendation. And what we found is 4.5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, we created the City Managers Working Group and Joint Committee for recurrent flooding and storm and sea level rise with the Virginia Beach City Public Schools. And we took a hard look at the VIM study back 5 years ago, and where they recommended 1.5 feet near term and 3 feet long term. Well, it looks to us, and the PDC agreed with it, and to my study and our team, that short term is 1.5 feet plus or minus, intermediate is 3 feet, and long term is now 4.5 to 5 feet. And those are engineering challenges, and long term is turn of the century, but still, we have schools that our roads are still, and so you build that infrastructure to start to look at those aspects.
And the other point, this Coastal Resilience Subcommittee will meet Thursday morning, and one of the items is potential items for the regional legislative agenda that has to do with this. And so I'm assuming the items that we included in our legislative package that have to do with sea level rise and so forth, we would like to have on the legislative agenda. But I know one of the topics that we discussed at last month's meeting, which I think is very, very relevant, particularly in Virginia Beach, I worry about, it is the fact that the SMART scale does not allow points for resiliency, and there was a suggestion that we might ask for bonus points for roads that do accommodate that resiliency. I know the NEMO 7A does, and of course we don't have any state construction money in that, but sure would be nice. But I think that's certainly a model project that does build in the resiliency factor in the 3-foot elevation, and ought to be one. But I worry about, and I know we looked at it, but I worry about all of our exits in the Pungo Blackwater area, all of our evacuation routes, Pungo Ferry, West Neck, and Indian River were all closed, and we're looking at, I think, or we have looked at just very briefly, the possibility of elevating some of those roads, which are going to be very expensive, and we certainly can't do it at the local level. So I really hope there's something we can do to address the fact that, resiliency is not covered at all in any of the SMART scale funding, and somehow or other it needs to get in there so that we can get some state money, because they certainly wouldn't qualify for congestion. And, it really needs to be a factor.
Yes, John.
Anyone thinking they're going to get lots of help from the federal government, if you look at the OMB circulars and look at the guidance and look at the testimony of the committees, they're all talking about giving you the access to borrow money, not to provide money. Because, so people think that somehow there's gonna be this cash flow from the federal government in terms of grants. If you watch the committee hearings, if you watch the language, if you watch the guidance that's coming out of Office of Management Budget, there's no indication that that's the case. Everything is how to provide you the ability to borrow at federal rates and other kind of things, but don't expect to get a lot of cash.
Borrow from whom, John?
No, you'd be able to borrow debt, but get it through at a federal rate.
I see.
Right,
From private sector.
yes, the government is these trillion-dollar deficits. If you listen to them talk, if you listen to the committee chairmen, if you listen to the analysis, you know, they got their own issues to solve, and they're going to be a source of credit versus a source of cash. That's what you hear when you watch and read the reports.
We'll ask them to explain it to their constituents.
Well, I'm sure they will.
Anybody else have anything? If not,
It all comes from us.